Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. I'm looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have today because I have somebody on the show with me that has worked with ladies of, I would say, almost immense influence and impact within the world, and has worked with organizations and ladies executives who have been in like the Fortune 10 companies. I mean, we're talking heavy hitters here. Of course, we won't be naming any of those, but we're going to get an opportunity to get some of the insights into what those ladies are dealing with. And quite frankly, a lot of those ladies are also now doing their own thing and still carrying some of the things that they have to deal with and overcome. And also some of the things that they cherish along with them. And so we're going to get into that in a little bit with Dr. Liz Bywater. Liz, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. It's really nice to see you. It's been a while since we last spoke, so thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, I'm so excited to our conversation. Now, but before we get into that, I like to ask the question, because you are going to explain this much better than I will, is if you can tell everyone a little bit about how you're making a difference in the lives of the people who you work with today, I'd appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. I guess what I would say is my work is very much focused on helping people, men and women, although many of my clients are executive women and business owners, helping them to be more effective, be more successful, be more gratified, have a kind of just a more fulfilling, I won't even call it work-life balance because there's no such thing, right? But a whole life, right? A successful work life, successful business life, and a happy personal life. And we can talk more about that. But one of the things that maybe we'll discuss is how challenging it can be to find, where to put time, effort, and energy in order to get what they need from the world and to bring what they bring to the world. It's no small feat.
It is and you bring up a really interesting point when you refer to the whole work-life balance thing, because I think sometimes you can make yourself feel guilty about conceptually what work-life balance may mean. And I've had ladies on the show who have said, you know what, my work-life balance is that I love to work. And
Yes.
So therefore that becomes my primary, objective, my primary, time, effort and activity. And it's even what I think about when I'm on my personal time. And you know what? They have found peace with that.
And that's the key, Jim. I think to really be clear with oneself about what do I love to do? Where do my passions lie? Where do my talents lie? Where can I make a difference? And that's not to say it's only in work or only in business or only in family. I mean, there's lots of ways that women can make a difference in the world. And often it's in many ways. But I think in general, women are over the years have been taught that if they're doing too much either for themselves or in their work lives, then somehow they're neglecting the people in their personal life, whether it's their children or their spouse or, friends and family. And that's a very unfair pressure to put on women, but one that I think persists. It's not exclusively put on women, but as you know, I do a lot of executive coaching and I work with both leaders and their teams to really help them be more impactful and more successful. That is a theme that comes up again and again, the sense of, I love my work. I'm good at my work. I want to keep, getting better at my work, but I always feel guilty because I'm not doing enough at home. And sometimes that's an internal pressure and sometimes that's an external pressure. And often it's some of both.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I would dare to say, because of so many people that you've worked with, over the years, have you seen some generational changes in all of this? Meaning, I have some people who are in their, 55 plus, versus the 45 to 55. versus the 34 to 55, 45. I mean, do you see a shift and a difference based on where you are in your life cycle? And everybody's different. So for example, I know of some guys, and I don't think I would want to do this, who are having kids again or for the first time in their 60s. And I'm like, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is interesting, and there are people who are kind of doing their second go round, maybe first, but often for men, when you're first having a set of children when you're in your 60s, it's often kind of a second family, an additional family, and that's not an easy task either. But in terms of generationally, yes, I do think there are general differences. Individuals may not all fit into this, but general differences. I was maybe 2 weeks ago, I was speaking at the Cornell Alumni Leadership Conference, which was held in Philadelphia this year. And there were a group of maybe 200 people or so, and I was leading a session on leading high-performing teams, building and leading high-performing teams. And one of the things that came up was very much this topic of how do you spend your time? And it was men and women in the audience, but how do you spend your time in a way that you don't feel like, if I'm pursuing my goals professionally, if I'm making my business grow, if I'm, going up the ladder of the executive ranks, that I'm somehow neglecting family life. And I absolutely think women, let's call it 45 to 50 and up, and men struggle much more with this than the younger generation. There were some people in the audience who were in their 20s, and I said, you guys are so much better at this because you've been raised, I think, in a culture that promotes and values taking care of yourself, having time with family and friends, and not feeling guilty about it, not feeling like you have to apologize for it. I think sometimes it goes too far and you get a clash of cultures, even in a workplace or a business environment, where you have people who have been working for a long time and said, listen, I had to sacrifice dinners with family and I missed soccer games and it was very difficult, but what's up with you guys? You're heading out at, 4:30 in the afternoon. There's more work to be done, right? So it does vary generation to generation. And I suspect ultimately the pendulum may swing back again. We're actually at an interesting time now because there's all of this return to work. People have to be back either 2 or 3 or even 5 days a week, where for several years post-pandemic, during and post-pandemic, they became a little bit more balanced, if you want to use that word, in terms of, well, okay, I can be at on my laptop, sitting in my home. I can make sure the kids get off the school bus. Things are much more complicated now. So I think for men and women of every generation, you're going to see that this struggle between where am I spending my time and how can I be as effective as possible, you're going to see a little bit more of that coming back in, I think.
And I would dare to say that when you start talking about doing work differently, I think many of us kind of have to take a step back in doing just that. I had that problem with today, and you and I, before we started talking, I had missed an email and a message from you, and I said, I get like 1,000 a day. I said, I'm sorry. I've tried a couple of admins and that hasn't worked out for me, and AI hasn't caught up with me yet, but I need to do work differently. And I think that's really a hard thing to accomplish when you think the way that you're doing something is the most expeditious and effective way that you can do it. But if you were to stop, you would actually find out, especially in today's world, that that's not the case, that we need to start using things like AI. We need to start, approaching things a little bit differently. We need to change our behaviors. And when you start talking about leadership, it is extremely behavior-based and repetition. I was, essentially treated or led this way, and therefore I do the same thing. And sometimes we have to break those cycles. So how do you help people kind of, break their mold?
Myrina.ai draws inspiration from the legendary Amazonian Queen Marina, embodying resilience and strategic brilliance. With our AI-powered SaaS platform, we equip women-led businesses for success in the evolving landscape of AI and business automation. As a partner and community for female-led businesses, Myrina.ai maximizes their potential using AI while providing essential support. Ready to amplify your success using AI with like-minded ladies? Register or learn more at Myrina.ai. And now, back to our interview.
Well, you said a moment ago something that is, I think, so important, which is, we do things the same way over and over again. And it's not always working the way perhaps it might have. There would have been a time that you wouldn't receive 1,000 emails a day. There would have been a time where you wouldn't have gotten any emails if we're really going back a ways, right? Email wasn't even a thing, but now we have emails and Teams, instant messaging, texts. People can reach us all the time in multiple ways. And you mentioned, we have to stop. Right? Maybe we just have to stop and rethink things. And that's a very big part of the way I help my clients become as effective as they can. Is the book that I wrote a few years ago, you and I may have spoken about at one point, is called Slow Down to Speed Up. Lead, succeed, and thrive in a 24/7 world. And although I wrote it a few years back, I was just speaking with this group about it recently. It is maybe more relevant now than ever, which is we're going, all of us, very quickly, we're inundated with, communications and things that we have to get done and constant flow of information. And often the information is, upsetting or distressing or at least distracting. And if we just keep going faster, we are going to miss things. We are going to make mistakes. Sometimes they're small mistakes and you can fix them easily, but sometimes they're big, important mistakes that are much more difficult to rectify. So in slowing down long enough to think through, how am I approaching the work that I do every day? How am I prioritizing what I do so that I'm not just every day going through my lengthy, ever-growing to-do list, checking a few boxes, but adding, a whole bunch more? But am I really thinking through, what do I, as a business leader, as an executive, as a part of a community, what do I need to accomplish? What are the things that I need to do quickly and well? And what are the things that I can either say no to or, hey, I can get to that, but not today? But it's the slowing down, it's the stopping, it's the taking a breath to really consider your approach to the day-to-day and keeping that in line with what you're looking to accomplish on a longer term basis. You can become much more effective, but you just can't do it if you don't take a pause and think about what's a better and more effective way to get things done.
So, to me, when you start talking about the rapid pace of change,
yes,
how often would you think we need to do that process of, stop, rethink, iterate? Because to me, it's like, okay, to me, that's, I think, a new use and purpose for the quarterly business review. It's the quarterly me review.
Yes, absolutely. And I think how often and how long you spend on these sorts of pauses, I call them like a strategic pause from the everyday busyness, like really deliberate, thoughtful pause. You can do them in a variety of ways. So mini pauses, 5, 10, 15 minutes, I think should happen at least once a day. That might be the way you start your day. You don't go on your email, you don't read the news, you don't respond to a text, you don't do a thing until you have looked over your priorities list, you have looked at what's in front of you for the day, and you look out ahead to what you need to accomplish maybe later in the week, right? This is just a mini pause at the beginning of each day so that you're clear and organized and calm, because when we're overwhelmed, we tend to get a little frenetic. Things don't get done as well, mistakes get made, things get missed. If you are working either in your own business or with a team, or maybe in a larger corporation, you will have your, let's say, quarterly meetings. And those are really good time to spend longer, either on your own or with a team. Maybe you spend a day together. Maybe you spend 2 days together, where you look at, again, are we aligned on what our goal is? What is our big vision, either for the quarter or longer? What do we need to do? What are we doing well so we can keep doing it and maybe do more of it? What's not going well so we can quickly adapt, shift gears so that we don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. And so maybe that's on a quarterly basis, and you can keep spreading that out. Maybe annually you're together for the better part of a week, but you really cannot consider this a waste of time or a luxury or kind of a pause from getting things done. This is the way you get things done better and more effectively moving forward.
Okay, I want to hone in on something you said, and I don't know if it was just your natural use, an intentional use, but you used the word well. And I actually went through mental performance mastery training, and there were 3 questions that we were taught that we need to teach our people that we work with. And for me, I went through the training because I actually coach high school baseball. And so I'm a pitching coach. And so
Yeah.
the person who actually developed this program works with a lot of athletic teams, but is now also working with a lot of organizational teams as well. But the three questions that when we look at and review our performance are, what did I do well? What did I not do well? And then it's, what am I going to do about what I did not do well? And it was all about well.
Yes.
So can you provide some insight into why we should, when we are doing this review, use well?
For a couple of reasons, at least. The first reason is it's very easy to ignore the things that are going well and hyper-focus on the things that have to improve. And I work with very high-performing executives and business owners all the time. And invariably, when we talk about, how things are going, how they're being perceived by their stakeholders, where they're making progress, et cetera, they say, I don't want to hear what's going well. Just tell me what I have to do better. And the truth is, we all build on strength, right? We don't build on weaknesses. If you're doing very well and you do a little better than very well, that's much better than pulling up from doing poorly and just kind of getting good enough. If you're really doing poorly in some areas, yes, you, your team, your company, you need to fix it if it's going to weigh you down. But real growth and progress comes from focusing in on strengths and excellence. And I thought of an example, actually, as you were speaking. My son is a French horn performance major. He's about to graduate and go on to his master's program in French horn. And one of the things he has to do all the time is practice his instrument. Every day, multiple times a day, he has to sit down with that instrument. And he could spend an hour or two or three a day playing the same things sort of well or poorly and get no benefit. And in fact, be repeating bad habits so often. I would imagine in sports you see the same thing. If you keep repeating things that are not going well, you get better and better at doing things poorly. But if you slow down and you figure out, what am I doing well? How do I keep doing that even better and in more ways? That's where the real magic is. And that's where progress emerges.
Now, I'd love that you say that because thinking about the whole pitching thing, we're talking about body movements. And I talk a lot about quality of that movement. And if we start thinking about it and applying it into our leadership behaviors, it's, how are we going about and executing upon that? And if we just keep doing the same thing, if they don't fix their body movements, look at the quality of their movement, what I say is you just get good at being bad.
That's it. That's it. And that's a waste of everybody's time, right? It's certainly going to hold the individual back, but in baseball, you've got a team, it holds your whole team back, right? It's just, it's not a useful thing to focus on. Again, if something's going wrong, I'm sure you make improvements. It's important so you don't drag everything down, but figure out what's going well. And if as a leader, you also are demonstrating to the people around you, let's think about our strengths. Let's think about our passions. Let's, in some groups, I ask people to think about what do they bring to the team, right? What am I really good at that I want to share with you as my colleagues? How can I help us collectively improve? And that leaves everybody in a much better position to keep growing.
So if you could, and when you start talking about the things that, either even yourself in your own small business
Yes.
or working with others, can you talk to how embracing female qualities and strengths has actually helped to overcome challenges in the business?
Embracing female qualities and strengths. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things, and again, we're speaking in generalities, but one of the things that has often been valued among women in our society, and women tend to be pretty good at, is nurturing relationships. Women, for the most part, and part of this is focused, on family and community and so on, and it translates many times into a business environment. So the focus on making sure that there's trust, there's good communication, that when things aren't going well, you go back to whomever that you've had maybe a conflict with and say, hey, how do we work this out so that we can solve a problem and that we can continue to feel, safe and trusting of one another as we move forward. That tends to be a great strength of many women. And I feel like many really good female leaders, men as well, are really excellent at building and maintaining relationships. So I think that's one. I also think kind of related to that, communication can be a great strength of many women. Again, not exclusively so. Many men are wonderful communicators, but a lot of women are especially good at this. And it's important because how do we convey the vision that we have for our company? How do we tell people that work for and with us what we need? And how do we align on, making growth for the company? You have to be speaking with people. When you're not speaking with people, maybe you're communicating in writing, but that crystal clear, thoughtful, respectful communication can be a strength. And that's really important to focus on and not ignore. So relationships, communication, I think self-reflection can be a great strength of many female leaders. The ability to slow down a bit and understand, how am I coming across? Where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? Now, this is, as you and I know, this is a double-edged sword, because awareness of one's weaknesses is important, because otherwise you stumble over your own 2 feet. You don't even realize it. But it's a strength to know that they're there and to decide what are the things that I need to work on improving so that I'm not inadvertently holding myself or my company back.
So one of the things that's always, I can give a multitude of different examples in regards to when we think we're doing the right thing. And I jokingly talking about that self-reflection piece, right? I jokingly say that God made our eyes point outward. We can't really see what's going on inside. And some of us, can get a reflection and get an understanding. But for the vast majority of us, we're doing things that we don't even realize are self-sabotaging. Talking about, working with all these different, folks within these organizations, and do you see some type of, because you talked about generalities, some common things that people just kind of carry with them, regardless of whether it's in the organization or it's in their personal work, or when they go and start their own side gig or their own thing?
At the core of Myrina.ai is customization and the innovative AI you process, which uses AI to infuse your personality, style, and vision into cloning you and growing your business. Are you ready to amplify your success using AI with a community of fellow female entrepreneurs? Go to Myrina.ai today. And now, back to the interview.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things that comes to mind immediately is a lack of self-confidence. And that's kind of a broad statement, but I've worked with women who are new managers all the way through CEO level, independent business owners, and also, Fortune 10 executives. The theme that runs through is that there is sometimes maybe this is too strong a word, but kind of this imposter syndrome, right? Like, how did I get here? Am I really good enough to do this job? What happens if I open my mouth and they find out I'm not as good as everybody thought I was? And it's this pervasive self-doubt that can really hold people back. It's almost always unwarranted. I mean, I've spoken with women who are remarkably accomplished, brilliant, delightful people who, in the confines of my coaching conversation with them will say, Liz, I have to admit, I don't know how I got this job, or I don't want to take this promotion because I don't think I can do it, even though they've been tapped on the shoulder by people who know they can do it, to say, hey, we'd like you to take on this new challenge. So that's a theme that I think is an important one. And it's unfortunate because in some ways, I think, little girls are raised to be a little bit more deferential, a little more self-deprecating than little boys are. Little boys more often are told, don't cry and don't show your weakness. And that's unfortunate for them, right? They have to be bold and have a lot of bravado. That can help them in the workplace, though, right? Because they're more likely to say, yeah, what you got for me? I can take it. Whereas women might be more likely to say, oh, you want me for that? Right? It's really a dichotomy there.
Okay, so can you think about a time when actually staying true to your principles has led to an achievement? Whether it's business or personal, actually sticking to your principles.
That's a great question. I don't know if this is a perfect answer, but one of the things that strikes me is that I speak with people, and I will apply it to myself as well, about thinking about what kind of work do you like to do and how do you like to work. because when we put a lot of time and energy into things that either we don't have a passion for, or that it just isn't a good fit for us, it's much harder to be effective, and certainly harder to feel happy and gratified in what we're doing. So I've pretty much always been a solo entrepreneur. For years at the beginning of my career, I was just a psychologist. I say just, but that was all the work that I did, was a private practice psychologist. But in my own practice, there was a very brief period of time where I worked for somebody else. And frankly, I did not like it. I really prefer being my own boss, setting my own schedule, choosing with whom I will work, and so on. And I really followed that over the years of my career, even when, maybe this was 20 years ago or so, I switched gears to where, almost everything I do now is around leadership consulting and working with teams and helping executives and organizations. Still have a small private practice, but it's always been me working for myself in the ways that work fit my style, and allow me to. The other thread is that I really love helping people. And that has been something that has been a commonality from clinical work all the way through my executive coaching and leadership development. So work for myself, try to do some good in the world, and try to help people live sort of better, happier, more effective lives.
Okay. So talking about that, doing your own thing and all that, what inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of Cherish and Conquer? I mean, you hit on it a little bit, but if you could kind of really gear it in on Cherish and Conquer.
Yeah. Well, when I first got into this executive coaching space and leadership development, I had spent a number of years in private practice, and I was, in terms of Cherish, like I called on a lot of things that I was good at and I was trained at and were part of my natural inclinations. But there was something about only working with people one-on-one in an office, having an impact that was not quite as broad as one can have working in an organization. I felt like I could do more, like I wanted to add something to that. And then it's sort of happenstance. I got a mailer, old school postcard in the mail, again, maybe a little more than 20 years ago now. It was sent out by a fellow who is a clinical psychologist who was working now as a corporate coach. And he said, "Are you a PhD level psychologist? You have all the skills and experiences to be really great working as a coach and consultant in the corporate world. I can give you some materials, and then you can launch your own business doing this if you're interested." And I explored it. And I said, this it allows me to keep being helpful. It allows me to do things in a bigger, broader way. It allows me to continue being my own boss. And it pulls on my strengths in working with people, in communication, and helping build relationships. So I took those things that I sort of cherish about myself and my lifestyle and my work life. And the conquer part, I guess, was conquering the idea that I really did not know anything about at that time, the business world. Frankly, I didn't know about coaching. I didn't know about, the executive suite. It was all new to me because I was working in private practice doing clinical work. But I decided I wanted to take a chance. And what's the worst that can happen? And let me give it a go. And I have not turned back ever since. I've just been very fortunate. I've had a great deal of fun. And I wouldn't have done it any other way in retrospect.
Well, okay, so I'm going to need you to kind of dissect things a little bit more for me, because there's a very big difference between sitting here and saying, I'm going to coach and help people who are leaders, and then therefore, example, I'm going to be working with, or I end up, well, however the case may be, working with organizations that are in that, let's just say, $5 to $50 million range. That's not what you're doing. So how do you think about that whole segmentation piece, and then gravitating or moving or intentionally or proactively moving to be able to work with, large, very large organizations and the largest of the largest?
Well, I think there were a few things that went into it. And one of it, and don't let me forget to come back to this, because I do think the fighting this sense of, do I know what I'm doing? Do I have enough self-confidence is important, because at the very beginning, I thought to myself, I don't know what I'm doing. Can I do this work? Can I be of help? And I learned as much as I could. And I think I was able to have impact early on because of my training and experience as a clinical psychologist. But I also leverage something which is a strength of mine, which is building connections and relationships. And I met up with a small boutique firm that was working with senior executives in very large companies. And I did a little bit of subcontracting for them. I, did some coaching. I met some executives. And I realized pretty early on that people are people. And whether I'm working with somebody in my clinical office and they're talking about family life and work frustrations and so on, or I'm working with an executive in, a Fortune 10, Fortune 50 company, and they're managing, billions of dollars and have, hundreds or 1,000 people working within their organization, people are people. And if I can listen well, and if I can add a bit of advice, and if I can ask some thoughtful questions, I can help people come up with some of their own solutions, along with some, over the years you learn quickly. And then it didn't take too long for me to start absorbing how these companies work and what some of the political dynamics are and how to ensure that people are being perceived in the ways that are important for, career development and career growth. So it does seem like a big leap because, how come all of a sudden, how did I go to all of a sudden working with executives in these very high roles in these very big companies? But, in some ways, the work was the same from the very beginning through today.
Well, I think you hit on some very key and fundamental components. I mean, you talked about, listening. And I think we all can get better at that in our active listening skills.
Yeah.
And then it is, the inquiry piece, and asking better questions that get deeper to the point to where what you said, I think, is extremely key. And that's people coming to their own conclusions.
That's absolutely true. That is spot on. And you're right. Most of us can get better at active listening. Oftentimes, and part of this is that we are in a very busy world and we often feel rushed. We always are trying to get to the next thing, that we sort of know what we want to say, and we might even know what answer we want to get from the other person. And the other person might be halfway. I mean, I have wonderful people that I'm working with, but I have to remind them frequently when they're speaking with their colleagues, even though you know what they're going to say and you can stop them mid-sentence, don't stop people mid-sentence. Let them finish their thought. Sit with it, think about it, see if you can learn something new from it, maybe ask another question. And if you need to say at the end, you know what, I completely agree with you, I'm glad you got to that point. That's much better than stopping them midpoint and saying, yeah, I know, let's go to the next thing, right? I was already there, because people feel very devalued and demotivated when you do that. So the one other thing I'd also say, Jim, is, I didn't create these things all by myself. Not only did I have the background and training from people who knew how to work with individuals clinically, I also have had my own coaches and mentors over the years, and that's been extremely valuable. So, there is something, although there are commonalities between doing psychotherapy and being an executive coach, there are also significant differences. And so I have also engaged my own advisors and mentors to help me understand the frameworks around organizational dynamics and, some of the proper ways to approach the coaching work and to be most effective with my clients. So I want people to know too, not to expect to be able to do it all on her own, because it's really useful to have people around you who've done this sort of work, whatever the work is that you're doing, and get some advice and some mentorship and a thought partner.
Well, and I think you even hit on it too. I mean, because what I hear is you were taking multiple perspectives. Because I would dare to say, while there's some consistency across the people who you've had, that type of relationship with, is that there's always that, the old Pareto principle rule comes into play. Well, 80% of what they were talking about seems very similar, but this was the differentiator. And I think as you get more skilled at something, it's that 20% may go down to 10 because, hey, I've been here for a while and I've got long in the tooth, as they say. But there's still always something that you can gain. And then also the questioning piece being so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to have a variety of people that you are speaking with, to get lots of different perspectives. And, I'll find every now and then I have someone who lives in Spain now. She's a lovely person. Her name's Debbie. And she helped me formulate some of the materials to go along with my book a few years back. And she and I had fallen out of touch until recently. And I said, oh gosh, we haven't spoken in a while. Let's get on a Zoom call. every time I speak with this person, and she doesn't do executive coaching, she's much more in the publishing space and social media promotion and that sort of thing. But she's lovely. She's smart and she's interesting. And I get smarter within 5 minutes of getting on the phone with her, just because there's something so dynamic about communicating with another person that you come up with ideas, even if the other person didn't suggest anything new to you. Suddenly different connections get made and you get smarter and more creative and more interesting. So even a solo entrepreneur, I think, does very well to keep lots of good, robust, interesting connections with other people.
Oh, most definitely. Okay, so one of the things that we love to do is have a little bit of a speed round, and we call it the Breakthrough Blitz round. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask you a couple questions, and you'll respond both rapidly and effectively, I'm sure. And these are questions that you already have the answers to. Okay, so are you ready to blitz?
I'm ready.
All right. So what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
Oh my goodness. My favorite thing to do is to turn off all notifications when you're trying to get something done. And honestly, my favorite productivity tool is a pad and a pen. Gets rid of all the distractions while you're trying to accomplish something important.
So what's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Oh gosh. Well, the weather, I'm in Pennsylvania. The weather's just starting to look like a little bit of spring. As soon as that sun comes out, my favorite way to unwind is to go for a beautiful walk in the neighborhood or relax in my backyard and just do nothing.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I feel like I should steer away from the political because it's such a crazy political environment right now. Gosh, I would say maybe Barbara Walter, because she's spoken with so many people and she was such a firecracker. I think she'd be very interesting.
And what's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
Oh my goodness. My favorite quote or mantra. Steve Jobs said something, and I may be misquoting him, but I think he said that he wanted to make a dent in the universe. I think that that's very inspiring. And so I keep that, near and dear to me.
And what is one piece of advice that you'd give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Do it. Just do it. Go out there, have confidence in yourself, make good connections, and do it.
Okay, this is our last Breakthrough Blitz question. What is the biggest misconception people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
The biggest misconception is that women don't have enough time to be successful running their own businesses. And it's absolutely not true. You have to get support. You cannot do everything. You have to pick and choose what's most important to you, but there's nothing holding you back from being remarkably successful.
Dr. Liz Bywater, always a great conversation that we have, and I'm glad you joined me today. But how does the Cherish and Conquer listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
The most direct way is to find me on LinkedIn, Liz Bywater. There are not many Liz Bywaters on LinkedIn. Connect with me, send me an invitation. Would love to meet some new people. They can also go to my website, which is lizbywater.com.
And give us one quick shout out again for the book that you had referenced. What's the title and subtitle?
Yeah, I'll actually show you a picture. So the book is, I don't know if you can see this in here, Slow Down to Speed Up, Lead, Succeed, and Thrive in a 24/7 World.
Liz Bywater, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thanks, Jim. Really nice to speak with you. Be well.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.